On today's episode of the MayDay Pod, we are talking about ownership around the major leagues and what separates the good ones from the ones we don't like very much. You know who I'm talking about. Up next on the show. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the show. I know it's been another long hiatus. Like usual, when it comes to podcasts, we have a running joke on the MCA pod, which is my longest running podcast at 125 episodes. The only reason that one is continually going is because I have other people involved. When it's me, somehow these things get pushed to the side, and I kind of just do them as I have something to talk about. So I'm still kind of developing this thing, figuring out what I want to do with it, especially when the season comes comes to an end, rather. And there's not as much, I guess, news to talk about. I want it to be everything. I want to bring people onto this thing. But today I have a interesting topic. I know we go by the threes usually, and there are three owners that I'm going to talk about. Actually, there's a possibility for a fourth one being here, but we're going to talk about owners. We're going to talk about owners and why they are the way they are, and the mostly hate-hate relationship that fans have with them and where these things come from. And I did some research, actually quite a bit of research recently, on some owners that aren't the ones that I have traditionally railed against publicly, namely the Oakland A's, John Fisher. I am recording this on Wednesday, September 25th, 2024, which is actually the last ever Major League Baseball game, at least as far as we know right now, in the Coliseum, and is the A's last home game as the Oakland A's, which very sad day for the fans, very sad day for me as a past player for that team, but and honestly a fan growing up. My father was a fan as well. It's the blue collar team, it's the underdog team, and I'm sad that they're leaving for a lot of reasons. I understand there's a bunch that goes along with that, and we will get into it in a moment. But I think this is a good conversation to have now, because there was also an article written by Ken Rosenthal and Brittany Giroli, which is an amazing in-depth breakdown of Jerry Reinsdorf and the now worst team in the history of baseball, Chicago White Sox. And man, this season has been crazy. We're going to have to do an episode where we just break down all the craziest stuff that happened this year and just kind of do a look back. That'll be a fun one. I've actually already started kind of putting that one together, but that's for another time. The White Sox are terrible. Jerry Reinsdorf is a major reason for that, and they have a lot of anecdotal evidence and proof of how decisions are made and why they are oftentimes a detriment to the team's ability to put a good product on the field and provide the entertainment that they're there to do, and the reason that baseball teams even exist in the first place. Surprise! I know this is going to come to really shock a lot of people, but believe it or not, baseball was not founded to funnel a bunch of money to rich people. That's actually not why the first people started playing baseball on a baseball field, and it became that. And so let's just create this. Let's set this standard right here at the beginning of this episode. As I am going to try to be as measured and non-ranty as possible. We'll see how that goes, and try to just give you an objective, not this is bad, this is good, or this is just what's happening, and this is why these situations have popped up all around the league, and why owners have these relationships with their fan bases, and why things operate the way that they do. Maybe there's some context for you, but I want to say this first. When you run a business, if your only number one priority at all times is to maximize your profit and increase your own net worth, in the case of John Fisher, that is exactly what he's doing. That is the only motivation. There is no other motivation. He could have taken less. He could have taken a deal that wouldn't enrich him as much, and he pointedly is not doing that, and he doesn't understand why everyone else doesn't understand that. And it's because John thinks that the pursuit of profit is the point of life, and he is wrong. So I just want to put that out there. If your case is it's a business at the end of the day, no, it isn't. It is, but it isn't. That's not all there is. And if you say that, that's what you're saying. You're saying the business should come before everything else, and that's just simply not true. You don't have to do that if you own something. You don't have to. It's not necessary, especially when it's a baseball team and they are not publicly traded companies. So you have other rich people that have bought into your team, but your stock price doesn't matter. So you can't even say shareholders are the problem here. It's just him. So we put that out there. That is not a good enough excuse, and we're going to kind of approach this from that lens. So without further ado, let's just go for it, all right? Here's the thing that I want you to know about ownership of not just baseball teams, guys, but sports in general. But baseball is a big one because they have something called, this is the number one underlying thing that is actually one of the most, I guess, most un-American thing that possibly there could possibly be is they have an exemption from antitrust law that allows them to have a monopoly. So no competing league can create a level that is at the same level as Major League Baseball, and that gives them a stranglehold on the industry and on the sport. Now, if you think about that just for 5 seconds, that's crazy. That's crazy. We're supposed to be breaking out these huge, monopolies and these huge things. That's supposed to be like one of the more American things there is. And that's, having 3 companies own everything is like very not, free market, is it? So in order for this to be the way that it is, that exists. And is, given by the government. They are not subject to antitrust law in the same way that, I believe I believe there's a version of this for the other sports, but it's not as binding, especially I think the NFL's is weakest because they have the XFL, they got all these other competing leagues technically that are the same level. Obviously, the NFL has a stranglehold because it is the best product, and that's how they're winning. But technically, they can be competed with, and so that's why baseball owners seem so dug in more so than maybe other leagues, is because they're so protected. It's actually comical from any sort of regulation in that way. So you got to know that first. That's where we're starting from, which then breeds a lot of these mindsets from the men that own these teams. And I say men because all of them are men. So if I say dudes and stuff, it's because every single person pretty much that I'm talking about is a dude. This is prompted a lot by, remember, recently, a couple days ago, actually yesterday, John Fisher released another public memo, like a letter to the fans that was supposed to come off as heartfelt and, hey guys, we tried. And what he did, there's 2 parts of this that you need to know. First off, he says this team has immense history. First of all, a lot of fans that are angry about it, quote, say this. They say, this is a very rich history team. You're ripping it away from us and our history. And then he starts by bringing that up, which almost sounds mocking because he has not acknowledged it at all until this point. One day before the last day, he decides to release a letter. And I don't understand why he does things like this, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But then he goes on into the rest of the letter and says, second part, let me list you a bunch of Raleigh Fingers and Ricky Henderson, the greatest leadoff hitter of all time. Those things are true. But I know for a absolute 100% fact, unequivocally, that he has no idea who those people are. If he saw them and had to meet them, he would not know their name. That is gross. That is just, it feels like he's trolling, like he's playing a joke on the people who are genuinely angry. They're losing their team, but there are thousands of people who have worked for or currently work for the team who are losing their goddamn jobs. And they're mad for a very, very real reason. okay, without any way to go do anything else, right? There's a lot of people that are being put out. He's just ripping jobs away. I understand that you have to, that's what comes with moving a team, but you have to acknowledge that suffering as an owner. When you own stuff, you have to make hard decisions, and John refuses to be accountable for those things. And I mean accountability, saying, hey guys, I understand why this is hard, but it's still a decision I have to make. That's owning your decision. Instead, he decides to do this little memo that's a quote unquote letter from him. It's not from him. Someone wrote it. I don't know if he's being advised to do this. If you're listening to this, a PR person who is advising it, stop. Okay, everyone had is trying to forget that he did this, and then he inserts himself back into the thing, and then is back into the conversation, and is surprised when everyone's mad at him again. He's very fragile. He's a very small man, and he has a very big ego, and he can't handle criticism very well at all, which probably comes from, I have no idea. I'm not going to guess. I'm not a therapist. Anyway, he quotes all these people that he does not know who they are. So that's another, just you are putting on a facade. You're trying to spin it as if you are one of them. No, you are not. And then he ends the thing by saying, we tried this, we tried this, we tried this, we tried. So he cannot help it but add I'm the real victim here, or it's not my fault, it's their fault, alluding to pushing off blame to somebody else. It is his quintessential move. It is what children do when their brother pushes them down, or you push their brother and they retaliate and then you blame it on them. That is what children do. It is childish, immature, and is false. There are many, many accounts. You can be mad at the local government all you want. You can be, they have their own role in this, and their stubbornness is probably does have something to do with it. However, I have it from many sources, many people, not just one, several, that have said the goalpost moved several times during that time. Every time they got close, he added some little thing to make it a little bit harder to get done, because at the end of the day, he knew the easier situation was just to not deal with Oakland. Also, Oakland doesn't have the potential that other places have. I think that's what's coming down to. I think that's what happened with the Raiders. That's what happened with Golden State. Just the ceiling, the ability, the way you can milk attention there and milk money out of a fan base is not as strong as it is other places, even though it has a lot of people. And I think that plays into it as well. People, just owners of teams there, are just like, my opportunity to increase my net worth and the value of the thing I own is not as high here. And so I need to move it. And that's why they all feel that way, because that is their number one goal. Okay. So we've established that. He put out another memo and I responded. My response was not to the act of moving the team. You can move teams. Teams move. Lots of teams have moved. It's really, really, really frustrating for a fan base to lose their team, right? But sometimes financial viability is a thing. Like, it's not a lie every time. In the case of John Fisher, it definitely is a lie, because of revenue sharing, the way it's done in baseball, every single team makes money every single year, no matter what they say. You notice there's only articles when they say they lost money, but there's never any articles when they make money. You can clever account. You can add expenses. You can get clever and spread player salaries over time, so it looks like deficits. You can do all kinds of stuff. That's how they avoid taxes. It's just the way that organizations with lots of money operate. Everyone does it. That's a whole nother thing. But they make money. They do. So you're moving the team because you want to make more money, not because you're not making any money. So we need to make that very clear as well. All right. Moving a team is his prerogative. I don't like the system, but it is the way it is. I don't think there's any way to stop him, so it's not going to stop. As long as he has other billionaires to bail him out and give him free rent so he can go and do the things he wants to do, so he can prove that he's valuable or good at what he does or whatever, I don't know, whatever's going on in his head, then so be it. But the least you can do is be an adult and say, I'm doing this, and this is why I'm doing this, and do it in front of a camera. Don't just go sit in front of a camera when everyone's like, ooh, when it's a bunch of other people that agree with you. If you are unable to even read a pre-written piece of paper in front of people that might not like you, you are not fit to own anything. Whether or not you should own it or not doesn't mean people who should own things don't own things. There's a lot of people that shouldn't own things that do because they were born into it. John is a great example of that. So my problem is not with the business situation. I understand the way the world works. It's not just him. Everyone does it. All 30 owners have done stuff like this. They're just better at spinning it than he is. And his attempt, his last ditch minimum effort attempt at spin at the end made me see red. And that's why I am discussing this right now. So that's what happened. That's what prompted this. And that's where I'm coming from with my comments. Now, I read this article about Reinsdorf, which has a lot of the shades of the John Fisher situation. And that led me to look into another guy, Arte Moreno, and why his team is people aren't happy with him. These are the things all three of these guys have in common is their fan bases are very angry with them. They're angry with how they are running their team. Now we can say, the Mariners are angry with John Stanton. I know that for a fact as well. Bob Nutting's another guy we can talk about. Some Rockies fans have their own gripes about their ownership group. Everyone can go look at their owners and say, "Hey, I wish you were doing something better, and we need you to adjust." And that's pretty common across the board. But these three guys are prime examples of how ego and how hubris is actively hurting their product and how them making an adjustment is not their priority. Okay, I have 4 main points that I would like to cover in this pod, and we'll talk a little bit how it applies to the 3 characters that I just mentioned. Hopefully that's fun. I know. Usually it's 3 points, but I'm going to try to make 4. All right. This episode of the MayDay podcast is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy Sports, and I've got even more great news as they are currently running a promo for all new users. The easiest way for you to get in on this special is by downloading their app or going to underdogfantasy.com and use code MCA when you activate your account. Even if you've already registered an account but haven't deposited, you can still use this promo code. So what are you waiting for? Get started today and can play along with me all season long at Underdog Sports. Claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash with code MCA on Underdog. So one thing you need to know about why ownership sucks, why owners go from being, and sometimes they go from being good or having success at least, to then being a poor owner, even though they're the same person as they age. And we'll talk about how each one of these guys demonstrates that. Okay, so number 1 point that all 3 of these guys have, or most owners get eventually as they get older. They get lulled into a reality that doesn't exist because of prior business success and sometimes early sports success. So they were good at something at some point. A prime example of this, and I rail against this guy constantly because he just drives me nuts with the decisions he's making and the way that he approaches things. He's very similar in a lot of ways, but Elon Musk has had some success in a bunch of different things, right? To a level. He's convinced a lot of people that a lot of it was him. I mean, we can argue about which things he did and which things he just kind of grabbed or whatever. But there is a level of savvy to convincing the world that you did all of these things. But he did pursue them. The idea of a technologist, person who is trying to change the world is something that's always been very interesting to me. And I'll be at first, I was a person who was interested in him at first. However, that success has bred this idea that when he has an idea, he's usually right, being historically accurate. Another guy who talks about this is Gary Vaynerchuk, right? There is a logic to that. I have a general understanding of the systems at play here. So I know more about more things. But at the end of the day, that only goes so far. And the same thing is happening with some of these owners. They believe that because they found success in something else. In Reinsdorf's case, it was real estate, or his parents' real estate. And with Arte Moreno, it was outdoor advertising, which is just billboards. He bought a bunch of billboards and sold the company for $1 billion, and now he's a billionaire, right? So now, if you think about it, and then John Fisher obviously was born. That's what he did to make his money. But his parents, again, were in Gap. They've done retail merchandising. So there's 3 different businesses that are not a sports team or even remotely close to being one in terms of building a team, building a team of people who can analyze and develop talent and then make a good team. None of those things translate. Okay. They know how to run a business to a point, and it depends on what time when they did these things and how much help they got from the powers that be above them, aka the government. And there's a lot of that going on too. So we talked about antitrust already. So just know that there are times when they're getting more help and there's times where they're getting less help, and a lot of that has a big effect on whether or not they are successful or not. Okay, so we need to keep that in the back of our minds. Jerry Reinsdorf has done a bunch of interviews talking about his beliefs and what he thinks makes a good team and this, that, and the other. So both Art and Jerry, and honestly John to an extent, have seen success in their ownerships of their teams. Right? They have had business success, they became billionaires, they own a team, and then their teams actually won at some point in their tenure. Those two things combined can create this false sense of you figured it out. But as I know, as a person who played the game of baseball, there's no such thing as figuring it out. It lasts for not very long before you have to adjust again until everyone else figures it out. And then you have to find a way to continue to be the cream that rises to the top of that bucket. Players have to do it, but these owners have decided they don't. They don't have to adjust. They don't have to continue to get better because they already figured that out and they're the one at the top of the pyramid. Why should they change? And they made it very, very abundantly clear. In the case of Arte Moreno, he is constantly hiring people to run his team that are just names somewhere else in baseball. Very little philosophy on how we're going to win. Very little philosophy on like how these people operate or even the nuance. Just he knows they had success somewhere in baseball, and that's what he's going to go off of. That is not a good situation, and that is why the Angels in the Mike Trout area have won a playoff appearance in which they lost all 3 games. He bought the team in 2003. And then, and according to an article in Bleacher Report in 2013, going over his first 10 years, they made the playoffs 5 times. Yes, they were 10-19 in those playoffs, but they made the playoffs 5 times, and they won 90 games all 5 of those years. So they were 90-game winners 5 of the 10 first years of his ownership. That is enough, and that I don't blame him for thinking that he's good at this, but the things that we know from there, he inherited a bunch of players. They won the World Series the year before he bought the team, which I find very weird that Disney sold the team the year after they won the World Series. That seems weird to me. But also, now that I'm really thinking about it, it was the highest value it would be at that point. So, and they obviously wanted out. So, it makes a lot of sense. And he had Mike Scioscia as the manager the whole time. Now, Mike Scioscia retires in 2018. About 2014 is when the analytics revolution starts to happen, and that's happened over the last 10 years. And it's no coincidence that as that has happened, as other teams have evolved and figured out better ways to build their teams and win baseball games, Arte Moreno has not. And therefore, they're terrible. Jerry Reinsdorf is exactly the same way, maybe in a little bit of a different path. He bought the team, I believe, in 2002, and he also owns the Bulls. We can thank Michael Jordan for giving Jerry this false sense of success. Also, just throwing that out there. But they won a 2005 World Series under his tutelage and have been very, very unsuccessful since. For a team that's Chicago, one of the biggest cities in our country, that is astounding to me. It's astounding that they have had such a lack of success in such a big market. He has spent money in the past, and he is a big baseball fan, so this is a little bit different than maybe Art. I know that Art likes baseball, but Jerry is a huge baseball fan, so he's always there, and he's always got his fingers in the pie. He's always involved, and his over-involvement is actually one of the big reasons. At the end of the day, when you sign, if you sign a player, you make a decision, you make a big investment, you have to run it by your owner. Certain owners are okay. They give you some wiggle room. They let you make decisions up to a certain point. Sometimes you can grab some filling players or some utility guys, or maybe some guys on minor league contracts with like escalators or whatever. They'll let you just take care of those because they're not a big deal. But the big ones, they got to run by them. Jerry wants to be involved with every single decision. Now, Jerry Reinsdorf is 88 years old. Jerry Reinsdorf isn't quote unquote analytically inclined from him. That's quoted from him. And he has to greenlight everything. When you have to greenlight everything, but you're unwilling to understand how evaluation's being done, that's going to cause some dissonance, and that's going to make you make bad decisions. So a prime example of this is trying to, the team itself is trying to increase its ability to follow along this analytics revolution. They're trying to figure out a way to get an advantage and try to win. At this time, GM Rick Hahn, they have Kenny Williams. These guys have been promoted all the way through the organization, and they keep extending them no matter how much they lose. So first things first, it was pretty clear, and was pretty clear for a while, that those two gentlemen were not uniquely positioned, or not their skill set did not line up with this revolution. They were old school guys. They were old school scout guys. That has value up to a point, but the game was changing, and they needed more than that. And he stubbornly stuck with them out of loyalty. Now, loyalty's good. I like that he's a loyal person. I do. But I have this weird feeling that this needs to be reciprocal, or he's not loyal. If you're not loyal to him, or if you don't pledge fealty to the king, something tells me that suddenly his loyalty is a little bit weaker, or probably a lot weaker. And so these guys ran the thing for a long time, poorly, not well. They did not do a good job, and you can tell by the product on the field. That's how you tell. But they were making money, because every team makes money. So they just kept putting them back out there. As those guys started to go, they tried to get some new blood in there for a managerial role. What's he do? They're looking for a new manager. They're going for someone young. And what does Jerry do? He kind of just chooses Tony La Russa and gives him the job. So instead of getting younger, he hires someone who's almost his age to manage a team, which we all know how that went. Not great. When you go over the people that you hire to make these decisions, or find these candidates for you and then make your own decision anyways, what was the point? Are you going to create a good atmosphere for developing a good team and building a winner, or are you going to create an atmosphere where people think that their decisions are just going to be overridden anyway, so what's the point? You're going to make them all anyways. They're not being given the free will to make the changes necessary to upgrade the team, because Jerry wants to be the one that does it, and he is not skilled enough to do it. And that's a big, big, big thing that I see with these people, is they have this vision of what they are good at, and they have this idea of themselves. And if they can't achieve that vision for themselves, they insulate themselves in order to get their outcome to happen anyways, to get what they want at the end of the day, even if it's not done by cleverness or business acumen, and it's just blunt force. And that we see that with Jerry, and we see it a little bit with Art. Sometimes there's an anecdote that I've heard from a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. This is probably a game of telephone, about Art's aversion of talking about Albert Pujols' contract towards the end of his contract. He didn't want it discussed in the budget. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want anyone to bring it up with him. And some executives found that tough to do when he was the highest paid player on the team, and they had to figure out their payroll, including that. You can't just ignore $40 million a year. And it felt like they were being asked to do that. Now, does that seem like a stupid, weird little little quirk that you have to work around and stuff just because a guy is mad about a decision that was made in his past and he can't get over it and can't take responsibility for it, having to eggshell around a player on your team, discussing a player on your team because your owner's ego sounds miserable. When I'm asked if I want to be a GM, those are the types of things that I think about immediately. Just like being in that situation, how would I handle it and how would I feel? It would be more frustrating than I think that I ever want to even be close to having to experience. And that's the most interesting thing to me. Those type of things remind me of being in a high school lunchroom. It's just guys trying to prove to other guys how smart and cool and talented they are. And it's funny how that shows up later in your life. When you're a kid, you think that adults have this stuff figured out. They don't. For billions of dollars to be at stake, for businesses this big, you would assume it's the most mature, put together people that you can think of. And it rarely is. Most of the time, it's the opposite. It's astounding. It's astounding how you're taught, like how these people operate or how they think. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but it's just the nature of the deal, especially when you've lived your whole life in this world. How are you supposed to know about any other worlds when you don't ever overlap with them? That makes a lot of sense, but it also is not a good thing. So when you've had success in the past, both as a baseball owner for a period of time, even if it was a while ago, and in business, then you're more likely to be more stubborn with the decisions you make. You're more likely to think that you know. And we're seeing that a lot with guys who probably don't know and are unwilling to acknowledge the fact that it just maybe they're not the one in position to do this thing well. Point number 2, also, all three of these guys are in this bucket for many reasons, but because of this early understanding, they don't adjust. They don't learn, they don't adjust, and they stop being curious. There's some quotes from Jerry that I mentioned before where he basically says this, like, I'm not big on that. That's not interesting to me. Well, it needs to be because of your job and what you do. But he is under the impression that he owns the team and he can do whatever he wants. But hilariously, he owns it, but it's going to exist after he doesn't. So does he own it, or is he just renting it? He's renting it, just like his team is renting the stadium from taxpayers. So there's this dissonance as well. These guys stop evolving, and they approach this whole concept from a hey, can you help me build a stadium because I am helping out the economy, as if he is providing a venue for the arts. You know, it's just like a theater or a library or a civic center. It's not. You are getting a free house to run your business and make profit out of that is paid for by the people that are also paying to come to the house that you are renting from them. They're paying to go into their own house so that you can charge them more money to see a product that you don't fully understand anymore. Now, when it's put that way, does it sound silly? Because it feels silly. Okay? I am tired, and John Fisher did the same thing. I am tired of hearing this argument that we're here to add jobs. You are here to add net worth to your name. That is the only thing you are doing, because you are taking jobs from another place. So if that were truly your goal, to create jobs in an economy, you wouldn't be then transplanting them or reducing them, would you? That's called spin. And it's very, very, very old. Some people are good at spin, and some people are not. And every single one of the owners in every sport of any company at all becomes a master at spin, or it falls apart because they're not good enough at it. So anyway, they stop evolving. And there's one caveat here. There is a part of this that has something to do with age. You know, Jerry Reinsdorf is 88 years old. Okay. There becomes a point where you physically actually, like, learning's very hard, and your brain literally becomes less elastic. So like creating new, like, ways of thinking and stuff is physically actually hard to do, just because that's what getting old is like. But that just makes needing to get help and defer some decisions to other people very important. And when someone will not do it, then there becomes a major problem here. I have a great example of a quote, actually, from Jerry that explains this very, very clearly. This is the final quote in Ken and Brittany's article in The Athletic. You should go read it if you haven't yet. It is from Jerry. It says, "Friends of mine have asked, why don't you sell? Why don't you get out?" Reinsdorf said. And this is the quote. So I want you to notice how many times he references himself. "My answer has always been, I like what I'm doing, as bad as it is. And what else would I do? I'm a boring guy, and I want to make it better before I go." So he goes, "I hear you guys. I don't care. I need this. It's mine, me. I'm a boring guy. What else would I do?" And to that, I say, nobody, do whatever the hell you want, Jerry. Just don't do this. How hard is that to understand? Why is that so hard to understand? That it's not about him, and it's not about us needing him to prove to us that he's good or what. Like, dude, we just want to watch good baseball because that's the point. Just do something else. And that's the inability to let go is a major issue. And John and Art have very similar neuroses, in my opinion. They need to prove something to someone, whether it's them or whether it's their parents, John, or whether it's the world or other billionaires, John, or whatever. That they need to go out and they need to show everyone how good they are at something. And who suffers? Everyone else. And that's the difference. It's just people doing whatever they want without thinking about anything else. And I don't care if you own it and it's yours. If you can't get out of your own head and and think of everything from the lens of what does this do for me, then this is what's going to happen. And it happens over and over and over. It affects your decision making, and it just doesn't allow whatever the entity is to move forward. And now I already touched kind of on this a little bit. I'm going to touch on it one more time. But seeing the team as theirs, as something they own and their possession, is another major reason they get dug in the way they are. So one other thing that we're noticing, and we'll include Bob Nutting in this, is they've found a way that this works. There's also revenue sharing, so they're going to hold on to it because it's literally just passive income. It's like they put it into a bank account that is just going to accrue money whether or not they put anything into it or not, right? Especially in the case of John. The people that make the decisions or can block or allow these things also were hired by the ownership group that they are part of. So it's very much a rigged system. We put the checks and balances in place ourselves, so we can change them, remove them, do whatever as we want. If everyone else is on board, you have to get a bunch of other people that think similarly to you to go against you in order to not be let in. You have to be a person that people don't like very much in order to not be involved. But if you say, "Hey guys, I'm making you all money," then they're cool with it and they all just go along because why would they care? But these things aren't there. The thing is, like, the companies, like I just said, these companies more so than maybe others aren't theirs. They're going to be either their children's later, probably mostly their children's later, but that's still not theirs. It's their families, but it's not theirs. They are not going to be the one that makes the decision forever. They are renting time with these things. These things live longer than people do. And with that understanding, you can make better decisions for the future. But the thing is, you don't become a billionaire. You don't have $1 billion unless you love owning things, unless you love being able to say, I'm the one I am that is me. Put that on my power resume. I own that, so therefore I have this swing in other places. And that's what it's about. It's a tale as old as time. It's always happened. It's just the way that it works. And it works to this level. It's always worked this way since the human history started, is people trying to get a level of power, exert that power, and eventually it ends. And it doesn't matter in the long run. But fans see this. And I think that's where the biggest disconnect is. Fans that are really bought into their team feel an affinity and that team is there for them. They feel that way. The good owners, the owners that don't get as much flag from their fan base, that's how they feel. They feel that their owner is on the same page as them to an extent, and that there's a social contract been signed that not every decision they make is going to be a financial one every single time. There will be some decisions that are just for the sake of taking care of their fans, taking care of their players, taking care of their employees. And people have done this in the past. There's no reason you can't do it unless the only thing you care about is money. And there's a good way to do it while still treating it like a business and running it to the best of your ability. And some of these guys just do not care anymore because they don't have to. You can tell a lot about a person based on whether or not they do things because it's right, or whether or not they were going to have to, and there's consequences if they don't. The old put your card away theory. So it's very interesting to think at. Like, guys like this my assumption would be they won't put the card away. They'll have someone else do it. They'll leave it for somebody else. And in the case of John Fisher, then he'll blame it on somebody else. He'll say that his son didn't put it away when he told him to or something, because that's the way he operates, and that's frustrating for me. Okay, I've also touched on this, but we're going to get into it a little bit. The final thing is every single person with this much, with the amount of money we're talking about in the billion range, or even the hundreds of millions in a lot of cases, it becomes a master of spin. They have PR departments. They do things and then put it out in the public as if it's a positive thing. Like, for example, the owner of Patagonia recently, in the last few years, said, I'm going to donate 98% of my shares to a charitable organization upon my death. And he's, worth 14 billion. Like, he's a tens of billionaire. He's a very, very wealthy man. And it turns out, and he got a lot of positive press. There was even activists and stuff. And he's like, and it was going against battling climate change. That is a noble pursuit, in my opinion. And Patagonia does do a good job, a lot of work in this area. They do put a lot of money into that, not to the tune of $12 billion, but they do it to an extent. In reality, 98% of those shares were going into a nonprofit that is controlled by nobody knows, that didn't exist before. So it was made for this purpose. And it turns out that it's most likely a tax shelter. So instead of paying the billions of dollars in taxes that it would have been to leave the company to his kids, he's circumnavigating that and keeping it. So it's going to go from like billions of dollars in taxes to $17 million in taxes. The other 2% that's not being donated are the controlling shares in the company. So the family will maintain control of the company as well. So now that you see it in that lens, is it just this altruistic thing? No, it's spun. Is it a good thing? Is it better than just like, I'm going to do nothing? Yes, it's better than doing nothing, but it is also not this from the kindness of my heart thing. There is an ulterior motive, and that is an example of phenomenal spin, because you got people are like, ooh, what a good billionaire is finally a good one. They don't. Good is subjective. Like, yeah, comparatively, yes. Overall, though, the whole concept of the way that you got there and the things you are doing are just probably not good for the common good overall over time. Having a bunch of people like this with consolidated power like this is not good for society as a whole over a long period of time. Now, I don't know. I'm not trying to be, socialism. Like I don't know what the right answer is. I just know that these are things you got to just notice. It's almost like being aware is the best you can do, and just making sure that you are aware of how these things work is important. So, yeah, let's talk about that same concept in the context of baseball. The reason that we're so mad at Jerry, and the reason we're so mad at Bob Nutting, and the reason we're so mad at John Fisher, and the reason less people are so mad at Art, but these, if you're noticing, Jerry tries to spin it in a way like, hey guys, that I'm just having fun here. I love baseball just as much as you do. But his lack of understanding of people don't want to listen to the what he wants thing. So it's not landing well. It's an attempt at spin and it's not working. John Fisher, his memo, he cannot get over his fear of criticism. And so he keeps hamstringing himself. He can't get ahead of it. And then he always does these little half-assed little attempts, which just make him look worse as opposed to do anything to help him in the past. And that shows a distinct misunderstanding of human beings. Like his spin's so bad. And I don't know who is telling him to do this, but they probably should just, he hides and he hides and he hides and he hides. I never saw him in person. Didn't see him once at the park. Didn't hear about him being at the park. No one even saw him when he did. So he snuck in, snuck out. If he ever went, I don't even know if he did. Has not been verified if in 2023 he set foot in the stadium, right? When you hide, and then you just put out something that you're trying to attempt to spin a little bit, it's the easiest to pick apart in the planet. It's just spin. He's trying to spin it like, hey guys, I'm in this. I feel your pain. He doesn't. Or he would stand up and be a human being and just do it in front of a camera. If he showed any courage at all in that way, I think that it would be a lot softer of a blow. If people could look at him and he could just take a little bit of criticism. But you add the idea that he does whatever he wants and then just hide, that he does something bad and then just like puts a bunch of people between him and any consequences, is the most just frustrating. It's what the most annoying people we know do. It is the most immature stuff. It is like dealing with toddlers, and that's where the frustration comes from for most people. They're mad about the team leaving, but they're double mad about the way he won't take any responsibility for that action. He still continues to this day to put most of the blame on other parties when it has been his intention the whole time, and it's not hard to see that. His spin is bad, and I wish it were better so that I wouldn't have to think about it very often. I just want him to hide and stay hidden. Art is another guy who hides. He mentioned a couple of years ago, I'm going to sell the team. We heard nothing. He's like, never mind, I'm not going to sell the team. Okay, whatever, dude. Just make a decision. And he has just been kind of a no-show for a long time, too, because he also does not like being criticized. But at least he had the courage to explore a sale, because I think he has a little bit of a better understanding than the two. Now, Jerry, on the other hand, he's not afraid of criticism, but he just thinks that it's not quite true. And it is. And that's the difference. All three of these guys are disliked among baseball fans all around baseball. And all three of these guys are doing different things. But at the end of the day, all of these things, spin, having prior success and not changing, all of them are associated with them in different ways. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the MayDay Pod. Again, guys, I don't think that these guys are like evil or like purposefully doing things poorly or like trying to hurt anyone consciously. Well, it's not quite true, but trying to do anything. They just don't either take it seriously enough or see fan bases the way that I would prefer them to see, and there's a frustration there. But also, they're all uniquely different, and I just thought that it was worth talking about because these wonderful articles came out with a lot of really great reporting and really great research. And I don't know, it's something that I've thought about a lot. I've worked through these ideas a lot. I've taken lots of notes. I've read a lot of literature on it, a lot of articles just about these men and the why they make the decisions they make. And in their defense, they have had a lot of experience. And a lot of this stuff is honestly understandable. But there becomes a point. It's just the same way that if you're to talk about someone who grows up to not be the best person ever, and you realize that it's their parenting wasn't very good, or they were in a tough situation, or what have you, or it was a tough childhood, and that stuff's understandable. That only goes so far. And when you become an adult and you have agency over your own life, especially you have enough power to make your own decisions and to change your ways and to do things differently, and to show empathy and be a person that cares about the effect you have on other human beings, whether they are below you in status or parallel or whatever. That's on you. And at some point, you have to make those changes. You need to undo the things that were done to you when you were vulnerable, when you were a kid, because you are no longer that way. And I refuse to take that as an excuse past a certain point. And some of these things are from upbringing. Some of these things are from being in a world. And it takes a little bit of thinking outside of your own brain, becoming self-aware, realizing that you are in a position, and there's maybe some reasons that things are happening that maybe someone might be able to help you with, and to bring someone else in. And there are a lot of owners who do that and have that mindset and have that ability. These are just the egregious versions that don't. And but once you have this understanding, you can start to predict how decisions will be made and what kind of changes that you really actually want to see in your team, as opposed to just being like, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're doing, fire this guy, fire this whatever. You can see a little bit more of the bigger picture, and also be like, oh, it's probably going to go for this because this is a pattern of behavior, and they all have different ones. So hopefully that's interesting to you. I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to go check out my YouTube channel. That is Trevor May Baseball on YouTube. Hit me with a subscription as well, because I have a lot of really great videos coming out. Some are higher produced. We have some other fictional content being written. I've been working a lot on screenplays and writing in general. I have a couple stories, possibly a book that I'm working on. None of this stuff is close to being anywhere, but YouTube will be the place where you get to see some of that stuff as it comes, some of those stories and some of those different ideas. I'm really excited about them. Also, leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. If you want to hear more stuff like this, join my Discord. That is also linked in the description. All these links will be in the description. And check out the other shows on MCA, including the Making Dane Action podcast, where my guest host Paul and I watch a movie from our childhood, go back, revisit it, and look at it in a budding film bro way. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really into film these days. I've watched 111 films this year. My goal was 100, and now I'm going for 150 by the end of the year, because I'm about to have a little boy any day now. So we're a little bit past the due date. We're in baby watch 2024, and I'm very excited. So a lot of changes. And I hope to see you guys soon. And we will continue figuring out how this show works as we go. All right, you have a great day. Make sure you drink some water, watch some baseball, watch some playoffs, enjoy yourself, and be good. And I'll see you next time on the MayDay podcast. Peace.